For those of us who have been in narcissistic relationships, it's really common to long for the days when the narcissist was idealizing us or love bombing us. Or maybe we are very envious of people that the narcissist is idealizing and putting up on a pedestal, and we wish that they would do that for us. But in today's video, I want to talk about why having a narcissist idealize you is nothing to long for and how it can actually be quite dangerous. Welcome to Looking Behind the Mirror, where we explore narcissism and take our lives back as we make sense out of nonsense. As a quick disclaimer, everything I say is based on my opinions and my personal experiences. I'm not a professional, and if you're really struggling, I encourage you to seek professional help. I am providing links below for you. Well, in today's video, as you can see, Limonene is making a return appearance. I'm watching her again while my husband's busy going to the hardware store. There she goes. So I hope she's not too distracting, but judging from the last video, I think most people really enjoyed her. So there she is. I don't know what she's doing, but anyway. Now, some of you watching might wonder if a narcissist can really idealize anyone at all. You might wonder what I'm talking about if all you've ever known is a narcissist that's constantly criticizing you and never happy with anything you do and never satisfied. But narcissists absolutely can idealize you or other people every bit as much as they can devalue you. And neither of these things are based in reality or have anything to do with who you actually are. To illustrate what I mean and maybe point out some things you might have experienced, maybe you've had a narcissistic boss who has picked on you and criticized everything you do, or maybe you've seen them do that to somebody else, and then some other coworker who seems maybe random can't do anything wrong and is put up on a pedestal and can get away with anything, and it doesn't seem to make any sense. That's a really good example of a narcissistic person idealizing one person while devaluing another. Another really common example is a narcissistic parent devaluing one of their kids while putting another kid up on a pedestal. I'm sure a lot of you watching this can relate to that. Or maybe you've been in a romantic relationship with a narcissist, or maybe just a close friendship with a narcissist, and you've seen how sometimes a narcissist will have a best friend or just somebody that they spend a lot of time with who seemingly can do nothing wrong. I've seen this personally where this best friend treats them in ways that you would never be able to get away with, but the narcissist just keeps giving them a pass and keeps making excuses for them and just can't seem to recognize or isn't willing to recognize the faults in this friend that they have. And of course, another example might be if you have a narcissistic partner or romantic partner, or you know someone who does, and the narcissist dumps their current partner and moves on to a new person, and this new person is put on a pedestal, and the narcissist just goes on and on about how perfect this person is and how wonderful they are. Narcissists definitely idealize people every bit as much as they devalue them, and neither of these things ever really make much sense. And if you can relate to any of these examples I just gave, if this is clicking for you, I want you to stop and take a minute to recognize that it doesn't make any sense, and because it doesn't, it's not because of you. If you're being devalued and you can never do anything right, no matter what you do, it's not because you're actually doing anything wrong. It's because of this fantasy or this delusion that the narcissist has built in their head about who you are. And the idealization that they project onto some other person is just as delusional and just as devoid of any connection to reality. So if you're being devalued by a narcissist, it is not your fault, and it has nothing to do with you at all. The person who's being idealized deserves that no more than you deserve to be devalued. And I think you can especially see this when you can see for yourself that this coworker or this new partner or this best friend can get away with probably worse things than what you're doing, but the narcissist continues to idealize that person no matter what they do. But any little thing you do gets picked apart and used to devalue you. So keep those things in mind when you start to take this personally and you start to think that you deserve to be devalued or that it has anything to do with anything you're doing, because it just doesn't. Okay, so what if you're the one being idealized? Or what if you were being idealized? What does all this mean? I want to use some examples to really illustrate what it means to be idealized by a narcissist, or really anyone, because this idealization is something that we all do to a certain level, but to narcissists, it's really all they have when it comes to the way that they judge other people. And it's really based on a fantasy of who you think the other person is. And that is based on how your idea of who that other person is affects the way you feel about yourself or the way you feel. It's all about you. So here's an example that a lot of you could probably picture. Maybe some of you have actually experienced it or seen it in a movie of somebody who develops a really big crush on someone that they don't really know. I think a lot of us probably did this in high school and maybe as adults. Maybe like in high school, somebody was in your class and you thought they were really cute. And so you got a little obsessive over them. You got a really big crush on them when really you hadn't said more than 3 words to them. Or you saw somebody else do this. Another example might be if you knew someone at one point really well, or maybe not that well, and you haven't seen or spoken to them in 10, 20 years, maybe longer, if you can think of somebody like that. Another example might be if you are online dating, or if you know somebody who's online dated, you can really start to build an idealized picture in your head of somebody based on some text conversations and some pictures and maybe a few phone conversations, and you can really start to idealize and develop feelings for somebody you really don't know. So in all of these scenarios, I think these are really common examples that a lot of people fall into, where they start to develop a picture in their head of who they think someone is based on what they want, based on the way they feel, and the way this fantasy of who this person is affects the way they feel about themselves. So this idea of who this other person is can develop in someone's head with very little input from who that person actually is. And in any of these scenarios, if you actually start to engage with this person in real life, like maybe if you had a huge crush on someone in high school or as an adult that you barely knew, but then you actually started dating them, or you actually started interacting with them, or if you were online dating somebody that you really fell head over heels for before you actually met them in person, and then you actually did start seeing them in person and getting to know them. What normally happens is this fantasy you have in your head of who this person is, this idealized version of this person that you've put on a pedestal in your head, it starts to get filled in with reality. You start to get to know this person, and there's probably a lot of things that you didn't realize that maybe isn't so perfect about them after all. They become more human. They become more real. Maybe you don't really like them at all once you get to know them, or maybe you do. Maybe the relationship just gets deeper and more meaningful as you actually connect with a real person that you're actually getting to know, instead of interacting with a fantasy in your head that you have built to meet your needs and to meet your fantasies of who you think you want in your life. We can adjust our perception of reality without freaking out over it. We can get to know somebody in real life that we have idealized, and we can accept those times where reality starts to clash with our fantasy, and we can accept that input and change our perception of this person based on who they really are. And it doesn't feel like it's the end of the world, and it doesn't feel like we've been lied to. Narcissists can't do this because they don't really care who you really are. They don't have a concept of getting to know someone for who they really are, because their idea of who people are is extremely shallow, extremely surface level. Everything is all about them, and that's why this idealization or devaluation that's based on a fantasy in their head is all they will ever have for anyone, because that's all about them. And getting to know someone for who they really are requires a certain level of empathy and connection and vulnerability. And when they realize that you're not exactly this perfect fantasy person in their head, they don't stop and say to themselves, well, of course, once I got to know them, I didn't really know them before, so what did I expect? So, okay, this is who this person really is. They feel more like they've been lied to. They feel like you've betrayed them and you've tricked them somehow. And this is partially because they cannot take accountability or responsibility for anything. So, or they don't want to. They really, really, really don't want to take accountability for anything. And that includes this idea of, oh, I guess maybe I was being a little unrealistic when I formed this idea in my head of who this person was. Therefore, I need to take accountability for that and adjust my perception. They don't want to do that. They've got to blame it on you somehow. Even if this is a perfectly normal evolution of a human relationship, to them, it feels like treachery. It feels like they've been betrayed and you have scammed them somehow, because that's the only other alternative to taking accountability for having expectations and perceptions that are a little bit off. And another problem that we have with narcissists, as opposed to when a normal person's fantasy starts to crumble a little, is if a narcissist is idealizing you, that's one extreme, and the only other alternative is to devalue you. There's nothing in between, because narcissists have extremely black and white thinking. You are either this perfect, flawless, wonderful person that they're putting up on a pedestal with absolutely nothing wrong with you whatsoever, nothing bad you ever do, you're a perfect, wonderful, flawless person, or you're a worthless piece of garbage that tricked them into thinking you were perfect and you're just nothing but trouble and you're out to get them and they need to punish you for that. There's nothing in between. You're either 100% good or you're 100% bad. And so when this fantasy they have in their head of who they imagine you are starts to crumble for any reason at all, sometimes it's just a little time goes by, they have to go from 100 to 0. There's nothing in between. They can't take a little imperfection and say, oh, okay, this person isn't completely perfect, but that's okay. I'm just getting to know them, right? No, it's, this person isn't perfect. They're not the savior of the world. Well, they tricked me. That's who I thought they were. Okay, well, they're a complete piece of garbage. And then they're probably emotionally going to go through a lot of anger because this quote always happens to them. They feel like this is something that is happening to them. They feel like they're a victim of this cycle that always repeats itself, because no matter how hard they try or no matter how many times they go through this, they just cannot accept that nobody's perfect, or they cannot accept that anyone who isn't perfect is worth anything at all. Another problem with a narcissist's idealization is they don't value anything outside of that. I kind of touched on this a few minutes ago, but when a narcissist is idealizing you, they are projecting needs onto you that they have. You're making them feel good about themselves by standing in for this role that they've created for you in their head. You're helping them feed their ego and feel good about themselves by being perfect, by being this perfect idol that they can put on a pedestal. And if they can't do that, if you can't fill in this void for them and stand in for this role for them, there's nothing else that they value. They don't value an actual relationship with a real human being. So if you can't fill this role of being this perfect idol on a pedestal, they don't care about anything else. They don't want to get to know you. So anything outside of this idealization, anything that doesn't fit into this box, is nothing of any value to them. And that's why, or that's one reason that they will go from idealizing you to completely devaluing you and treating you like you're worth nothing at all. Because really you're not to them if they can't idealize you. And I think that if you've been in relationships with, or you're in a relationship with a narcissist, One thing to think about if you're being idealized or if you have been idealized and you wish you could get back to that stage or you don't want to leave that stage, I think it's important to recognize that being idealized is nothing to be envious of, as I said in the introduction to this video. It might seem nice for a lot of obvious reasons. Who doesn't want to be love bombed, and who doesn't want somebody praising them and putting them on a pedestal? That sounds really nice, but in reality, when that's actually happening to you and that's all the relationship is based on, that's a lot of pressure. And this person is shoving you in a box, really. So they're idealizing you, but like I've been saying, it has nothing to do with who you really are. And so they're not only holding you to an impossible standard that you are going to fail at someday, but they're also not seeing you for who you are. So even best case scenario, if you're being idealized by a narcissist, you're with somebody who has no idea who you are, who isn't connecting with you, who can't see you, who doesn't know the first thing about you other than how to manipulate you, of course. But they don't know what's in your heart. They don't know what's in your head. They don't know your flaws. They don't know your weaknesses because they don't want to look at any of that stuff. So really, what's the value in being with somebody who refuses to see any of the humanity in you, who has no idea who you really are, and all they can see is this delusion, this fantasy that they have in their head that they're projecting over the top of you? To me, that's no more valuable than if they're devaluing you and if they're projecting this horrible image over the top of you as somebody that they can blame everything on, that they can scapegoat. I mean, really, what's the difference? Neither of these relationships really hold much value. This isn't somebody that you can connect with. It's not someone you can trust. And even when they're idealizing you, this is a situation that can change in an instant through nothing that you've done. A narcissist can flip the switch from idealizing you to devaluing you in a second for almost any reason. And so even in a best case scenario, it could all fall apart in a second. And that's where the danger really lies in being idealized by a narcissist. This is something you cannot control, and it's really just a matter of time before the narcissist's fantasy crumbles, and because they refuse to take accountability or engage in reality, they feel like you have wronged them and now they have to punish you. And that's why a narcissist can go from treating you like you're their best friend to suddenly treating you like you're their worst enemy in a second for no clear reason. Because in their mind, you betrayed them because maybe it was just the way you tied your shoes, or maybe they noticed a pimple on your back, or maybe they didn't like the way you said a certain word. And all of a sudden this fantasy, this very fragile fantasy in their head just completely shattered. And they felt like you tricked them. And now they've got to punish you for putting them through this again. Once more, they thought they had found the one. They thought they had found the perfect person. And again, they have been fooled. And that's why they will become so angry over nothing. Because they really feel like they're the victim here, because they have ridiculous expectations and they feel like they have to punish you for something that you didn't even know was happening. And this is why idealization is nothing to envy, and it's really nothing to miss. It's nothing to want to go back to. When you're in a relationship with a narcissist, at no point was the relationship healthy. Not in the love bombing stage, certainly not in the devaluing stage. Not when you're trying to work things out and they're begging you for another chance and they're going back to the idealization phase again. At no point is the relationship healthy. There is no point in the relationship that you could go back to where things would actually be good. They might feel good, they might seem good, but at no point were you developing a healthy connection with another person. This has always been a game in the narcissist's head, based on projections and fantasies and things that have everything to do with the narcissist and never had anything at all to do with you. The narcissist bases their whole worldview on how they feel about themselves. They are the only real person that exists in the universe. They can't conceive of the idea that you're a real three-dimensional person with thoughts and feelings and preferences and flaws and strengths and weaknesses. You are only a reflection of themselves. You are only this projection that they have made in their minds, this person that they have projected over the top of you like a cardboard cutout. And so whether they see something they like or they see something they don't, it never had anything to do with you, and none of it was anything to envy. You deserve to be with people who can see you for who you really are. You deserve to be with people who are able to see you for who you really are, and people who, when they get to know your weaknesses and your flaws, will accept those weaknesses and flaws and will incorporate those weaknesses and flaws into the picture they are building in their head of who you are. Somebody who will love you for who you actually are. Someone who's interested in getting to know who you actually are. That's what you deserve. And that is what, as a human being, you actually need in order to connect with other people. And idealization has absolutely nothing to do with that. Idealization is like a counterfeit version of connection. It's no replacement for actually connecting with a human being that is actually getting to know you. So remember that next time you wish the narcissist would go back to love bombing you, or next time you see the narcissist idealizing somebody else and you're envious of that person and you want to be that person, remember the way the narcissist sees you is really not worth anything at all. It has no stability, it has no connection to reality, and it is no replacement for somebody who actually sees you and accepts you for who you really are. I hope this helps. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and comment below any ideas you have for me for future videos. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you like this video and would like to see more like it in the future. Until next time, thanks. Bye. Limonene was a much better girl, or better behaved, I guess, in this video than she was in the last, but you didn't get to see her much. There she is. She's just been on my lap the whole time. Like a perfect little puppy. See, she's perfect. I'm gonna idealize her, right? Bye.